All right, welcome to the Best Overall Show. My name is Jim Vessel. I'm joined today by David Koska, who is in slight internet purgatory right now. So, David, how are you?
Yeah. Hey, I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to readjust my internet so I can actually communicate at a normal level. But for the time being, we'll just see how it goes, and hopefully it doesn't
All
go
right,
too
well, we'll
bad
do our
type
best,
thing.
and if not, then we will. Yeah, you can just sign language to the team, and I can translate for you. How about that?
Sounds good. Frantic arm movements, and I'll just sit and
Sounds
chat.
good.
That's
Let
what
me
I'll
see if
do.
I can. Yeah. Anyways, I think you're just basically screwed on the video, but we'll get it working. All right, everyone, welcome to the Best Overall Show. It is Thursday, May 6th. We got an exciting show for you guys today. Lots to talk about. Obviously, we have the preview to go through. We're going to talk a little bit about some larger meta conversations, and just a bunch of other topics as well, and kind of go through some hot takes. So I will get the show started. There's no real announcements this week except the 3 announcements I'm about to give you right now. So first things first, guys, just a reminder that if you are interested in watching any of the shows on podcast form, just search the Best Overall Show on your local friendly podcasting app. So that could be Spotify, Google, Podbean, Apple, Google, Spotify. I think I said those already. Pocket Casts, Crack Pods. I don't even know what they all are called, but we are available. Just search the Best Overall Show. Second of all, next week's show, next week's competitive corner is exclusive to Deployment Zone TV. So for those of you that are watching competitive corner on Mondays, every 4th episode is exclusively to the DZTV channel on Discord. So make sure to check that out if you guys are interested in catching those exclusive episodes. And then on Tuesday, we have Rob Symes, the honest wargamer, on Politics and Plastic. He's going to be discussing the ethics of sponsorships with me on Tuesday. The time is still TBD because we are figuring it out. So that's it for announcements. Let's get into the weekly news. So, David,
Yeah.
before we get into the preview review, which I think was a big piece of news this week, I did just post a interview with the CEO Peter Adams of Creature Caster. So he's the guy that makes some really cool models. They make resin 3D models. They have a
Yeah.
Kickstarter called Judgment Eternal Champions that basically is about 2 weeks old. They've already funded it, but I had a really interesting conversation with him. They're actually based out of BC, which is where I am, and I had a really interesting conversation with him about kind of like how they started the company, like model manufacturing, like how they make models, like that whole process from concept art to, the full final sculpts of the models, and then obviously kind of what they're looking at as far as the future. So if you're interested in kind of that sort of behind the scenes look into the industry, make sure to check out that interview. That's on Duplicity Paint Studio YouTube channel, and that just went up. All right, so big news this week. We had the Games Workshop preview, and
Hmm.
yeah, I guess we can do a little preview review. There's still one more day to go as of this recording, which is, or no, 2 more days. There's supposed to be a big 40K day, which I'm putting in air quotes for those of you listening, because I thought there was going to be a big 40K day on the first 40K day, and we didn't quite see that. And then on Saturday, there is a mystery reveal, which we're not quite sure what it could be. So let's kind of talk through it from kind of start to finish, David. So day one,
Yeah.
we had
Sure.
day one was Age of Sigmar.
Age of
So what did
Sigmar.
you think of the Age of
Yeah.
Sigmar stuff? Do you like it? Hate it?
Um, I was super excited to see just vampires, and we got what we paid for. However, I'm kind of weirded out by the aesthetic that GW is going for with their like centaur vampire concept. I see the model has potential for conversions, but I don't know. How do you feel about them? I'm torn on it.
Well, okay, so the the ones that are more classic, I'd say. So like I really like the Radagast or Radagar or Rudiged, whatever his name is. I do really like the I do really like the ones that are more of a classic vampire counts theme. So I like the zombies, I like the skeletons, the White King. I think there's I didn't think they previewed it this week, but there's like that White King. I have actually a set of the Dire Chasm vampires. So I love all the vampires that kind
Yeah.
of classic look. The only model that I really hated was that weird half vampire, half bat thing, the Lady of Nightmares or whatever. I just didn't think that was a very good model. I thought it's not that I don't think it's well sculpted. Obviously, technically, it is like well sculpted. Like every part of it individually is nice. I just think the composition of it, like it just looks really odd to me. The
Mhm.
weird kind of like waist. It just feels like someone. It looks like a bad Photoshop job. Like someone took two different monsters, like a brand new
Yeah.
someone that's like not
Yeah.
converted models, and we're like, I want to make a half centaur thing, so I'm gonna cut my vampire in half and cut the head off this other thing, and then just like glue them onto each other. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like they flow together. It doesn't have a good like flow. It's just it's very like abrupt, I guess. And like
Yeah.
I don't mind the idea that they're going for, but I just don't think it was executed very well as far as the model's concerned. Like the top half looks really cool and the bottom half looks really cool, but together they just look garbage as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Though, I think, I mean, for me, like, I see the conversion potential in them, and I see that the fact that, like, the bottom part just needs, like, part shoulder. You have a really kick-ass model, and then on the other half, you have a vampire from, like, the waist up. So you just put legs on it,
Yeah.
and you have yourself a really kick-ass looking
Like
vampire. So I mean, like, you could actually have, like, this giant, like, nightmare steed, and then have, like, the vampire on foot hanging out next to it, or even taking like the old Blood Knight vampire on dragon and putting like the mount on that thing and having like a vampire like Blood Knight with like a giant lance like riding it, and then it has like potential, I think, which I might just spite myself by just buying all those models and converting them because they just would be really cool.
yeah, I'm not I don't think I'm gonna like I was originally really stoked to do vampires. I thought that'd be really sweet, but now I'm like less
Mm-hmm.
stoked. What do you think of the new Kragnos model? So he's destruction, which is cool because I feel like destruction hasn't gotten a lot of love. He
Yeah.
almost, you know what it reminds it, I almost feel like at some point they're like, hey, let's add some more Beastman models, and then they're like, nah, Beastmen suck. Let's just add this to destruction instead because we don't want to give Beastman new models. Like it almost feels like this should be
Yes.
like a Centaur or like a this would be like a Centaur model essentially. That's what it is, right? And he should be in like
what
a
was
Centaur monster, and they just like scaled him up maybe to make this like Kragnos guy.
what was I was just thinking about there was a Thagoth, was it called Shagoth or Thagoth?
Shaggoth, yeah, like dragon
Remember
ogre.
the yeah, the giant dragon ogre model. It had a special character that got shot by
Yeah,
lightning
I
and
do
stuff.
remember
Do you
that.
remember that in the
Yeah.
Beast of Chaos book?
God, I have to remember. I know what you're talking about. I can pull up my Warriors Chaos book. It's behind me, but you keep talking. Let me see if I can-
It's in the
Oh, is
Beast of
it? Oh,
Chaos
that's
book,
sad.
not Warriors. Yeah, it's in the crappy
All right.
Beastman book. Yeah.
Um,
Um is it though? Maybe it is in
I swear they're
the
mortals.
Chaos Mortals book. I forget. But that's the model I assumed they were making. Is like that Thagoth like super character. And I was like, oh, they
Kolek
finally
Sun
gave him a
Eater. That
model.
was the
Good
name,
dish.
and he's actually in
Yeah,
Total War. You can play him. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's in Total War. He's pretty big.
that's
But he had
awesome.
a big hammer as well, and that was actually a really
Mhm.
cool model.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's just the they just finally gave him a model. They're just edition too late or two editions too
Yeah.
late.
All right. So Age of Sigmar. I mean, neither of us really play Age of Sigmar. Tuesday we had our first quote unquote 40K reveal, and all we saw of all of
Yeah,
that, the only new thing that was actually announced for models was one Sisters of Battle model, which was the Abbess. Abbess. I keep thinking Abscess, but I'm like, no, that sounds really bad. She's the Abbess, which is I think she's actually one of the High Lords of Terra, right? Because like she's essentially the Pope.
yeah, she
She's
is
essentially the Pope of the Sisters of Battle. And then we had the one little priest. There's like a male priest, but everything else
with
with
the
yeah that
standard.
came with everything else we've seen already.
No, exactly. We saw one of the Celestian
Okay, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we
Saints,
didn't see
what
the
they're
whole unit,
called.
but like all the other models, essentially, like the units and stuff, were revealed. The Castigator, the Banner Chick, the like robot chicks, the what do they call them? Nundums? Is that what they're calling them?
I don't know, some sort of battle suit matrix. I don't know what you
Yeah,
call those. I don't
and
know.
then
I don't know
and
what
then
they're
we
called.
obviously got 2 books announced. So we have the Book of Rust 2. I think it's called Book of Fire, Zone of Fire. Yeah, no, sorry.
uh,
Yeah, it's called the Book of Fire,
uh,
Warzone Karkadon. Book of Fire, I think.
the Book of
And then we also
Bellicor.
got the Sisters of Battle codex announced, which was like the worst kept secret in all of like anything, because like we all knew as soon as we saw all these Sisters releases, we knew the book was coming. Um, so that
Yeah.
wasn't very much of a surprise. Yeah, Warzone Cardon, the Book of Act 2, the Book of Fire. So
I'm actually. Hey Jim, remember how last week we were talking about how they were going to try and make all the books super separate from each other?
yeah,
Remember when we said that? It says that they're going to be doing a Chaos Mortal, Chaos Demon conjoined force in that book.
right. But hear me out. I'm not
Mm.
excited about it. You know
Mm.
why? I'm going to tell you.
Why?
Because A, it's an army of renown, which means that it is going to have extreme restrictions, just like the Terminus S list did. It's not a supplement, it's an army of renown.
Mhm.
B, it's going to use any chaos portions are going to be old Chaos Warrior rules, so it's or Chaos Space Marine rules, so it's going to use 1 wound Chaos Space Marines. And C, the restrictions will probably be like you can take Bellicor, Demon Chariots, and like Mutilators. Like that's the Army of Renown. Like it'll be something just absolute. It'll be like an absolute garbage selection of units. So I'm excited for I'm excited for Bellicor rules, but like the actual Army of Renown, I have very little faith in that it's going to be even remotely playable based on what I've seen so far. If it was an actual supplement like
Just
Cult
so
of
you
Strife, which
know,
is absolutely insane,
yeah.
then I'd be maybe more excited. But
That's probably gonna be the only way you can feel Bellicor, by the way, is in
no,
that list.
no, no, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. All right. So overall, pretty disappointing
Bellicor
day
plus
one as far as I'm
manipulators.
concerned. I don't know if you
I
have any other thoughts on that.
I thought the new model release is actually really great.
Right, but
I
as
know like the standard bear. I don't know why they leaked that model out like a week ahead of time. But the priest model is
right,
amazing. I'm really excited about it because he looks like a really cool, like kind of like pseudo
right.
Malkador almost. I
I
thought it's
don't
pretty
think okay,
rad.
so
And
but David, we're okay, so like I'm not saying that the model reveal the models are bad. I'm saying as a preview, as a big Warhammer Fest hyped up thing, the fact that we only got 2 new models on that first day and 2 books, which we knew were coming, feels very underwhelming.
yeah,
Like all like if they imagine they had just revealed the new stuff, the stuff that we hadn't seen, it would have been 2 books, 2 models, and you'd have been like, wait, what? But they just filled it with a bunch of old stuff. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the new models aren't great. I'm just saying that it's disappointing given that the hype.
well, the other thing too you gotta remember is like in the past, it used to be a 1 day reveal and they just dump everything into 1 day. The fact they're stretching this out into an entire week is a bit unnecessary, but I feel like it seems underwhelming because it's stretched across multiple days. If it was like your Saturday morning and you pulled up a stream models, 2 releases, and AOS stuff, then like Necromunda, then Aeronautica, then this, like it'd feel a little more like robust, but because it's getting dragged across like 7 days or 6 days, it doesn't feel as like
Yeah,
amazing.
and in the photos they show some knights and some word bearers in Bellacorn and Heldrake, which looks the Heldrake looks like it's Alpha Legion. So I don't know what's going on there because it's like blue and gold and it's got green in there. So who knows? All right, so day 3 brought us books,
Black
Black
Library.
Library. So I actually, you know what?
Hell
You
yeah,
know what's
dude.
and this is the like I'm actually more the most exciting day so far for me has been the Black Library day.
Yeah, dude. Gaunt's Ghosts. Those new models look
And they're in
tight.
plastic, which I think that now that's like they're Forge World, I presume, like that arm of the company, and they're plastic. Do you think that's a hint that Forge World is moving fully plastic?
No, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. It's cool that we get to see the third iteration of Gaunt, so that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
funny. He just keeps getting remade and remade. I'm not complaining because I love Gaunt's Ghosts, and I'm a little weirded out because Ron looks like such a Chad. In the books, Ron is described as being like beautiful like a feline.
Nice.
Like he's very like scrawny, but like he's very scrawny but like muscular, like very like wiry looking. And this one, his bicep looks like he like crushed like an orc neck between them. Like I'm just like, what is this? His haircut looks very hipster, and I'm all about that like half head shave style. I'm happy to see that the 41st millennium is really bringing back really good hairstyles. So
Yeah, I mean you know what sucks to me? Like we've seen, what is it, three Katachan characters at this point. We've seen the guy from Predator, we've seen the
yeah,
chick, and I think we've seen one other model. I can't remember what it is. Katachan Commander of some kind. We've seen now these Gaunt's Ghost thing.
okay.
Like we keep seeing plastic Imperial Guard, but not plastic Imperial Guard. You know what I'm saying? And so like
Can we
yeah,
get
the more
yeah?
like plastic Imperial Guard that we get, the more I want actual plastic Imperial Guard. And so every time I see these
I
like,
know.
I don't know, every time I see these like one-off things, I'm like, yo guys, like if you guys can put out like 13 gangs for Necromunda, just take one of those sprues and just make them like guardsmen and let us have the guardsmen.
Please, please.
They're already
And
doing
everyone's like, well, why don't you
humans.
just turn, dude? Why don't you just take your Necromunda gang and turn them into guardsmen? Duh, come on. But no, I hear you. Like the fact that like over the last like decade, the last like couple years, we've seen like Blackstone Fortress with the new Trader Guardsmen look amazing, and then they have like the Rogue Trader Kill Team with the really cool like armsmen. Like we keep getting like plastic iterations of like human guardsmen, but they're all like monopose. They look amazing, but we part kit like regiment. Like
Yeah.
redo the Cadians or something. I don't know. Victoria Lamb has been knocking it out of the park though for third party miniatures. If you guys want really good third party company that makes amazing Imperial Guard, Victoria Lamb makes the best. Like they look like second edition Cadians, Valhallans, Mordians, Praetorians. She has like an outback regiment. She has a Gaunt's Ghost kind of regiment. And the coolest part is Matt Ward actually writes no wait, Amy Chambers. No. Is it Matt Ward? Someone from GW actually writes like fluff for all of her. Like they're not like GW named
Right.
regiments, but like one of the GW like OGs like writes the fluff for them, which is pretty rad.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we got more new 40K novels yesterday than we did on Tuesday, it's sad. And then as far as books are concerned,
Dude,
the only book that I'm really care about is Warhawk, which has this insane, which A is written by Chris Wright,
dude,
who has done some amazing books. And second,
yeah,
he the cover art by Neil Roberts is like, there's like, you talked about a Chad, talk about Chad Tarian. You see how chonky he is? He's like, come at me,
dude,
bro. And silence takes up like his scythe takes up like half the page. Like the art looks so. I wish I could get those like full cover, like full size art pieces. They're so good. The Neil
yeah.
Roberts does like literally the best art in
Oh,
40K as far as I'm concerned, especially for the Siege of Terror Horsehair stuff.
I'm super. Oh hell yeah, dude! That book is gonna be amazing. I'm really excited to see. I don't know. I feel like I just picked up Mortis a few days ago, so like
I'm
I
still
gotta
waiting on the
catch up.
audiobook, so I refuse to actually physically read it. But
uh,
any other books that caught your eye? Like, what do you think of
hey,
the? I noticed obviously a distinct lack of AOS books, which hints that potentially we're going to get a bunch of tie-in books when they potentially, what the rumor is, potentially launch AOS 3 on Saturday. This Saturday, that's one of the rumors. I've also heard it's going to be Eisenhorn TV show. I've also heard it's going to be none of those. It's going to be like New Horse Heresy box sets. So I've heard every rumor under the sun. But one of the reasons is that I heard that we didn't see any AOS books is because the idea is that we might see a bunch of books as part of a tie-in to third edition, like here, like just like how we
yeah,
had
kind of like
the
Indominus
yeah, like
books.
we had the Indominus books with like the new Gilliman and like Plague War and Avenging Sun and all that stuff. So that's maybe where they're saving it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the only other book that really interested me was uh, yeah, that's it. I haven't actually read Gaunt's Ghost. Should I?
I can give you a list of the ones
No,
you should read.
I'm not gonna read
Um,
half a series, man. I
I
mean, if
think
I can either
the
read it all or I'm not gonna read it.
like the first two books are technically like a string of like kind of like short stories, like they're deployed here, they're deployed here, they're deployed here. And then like honestly, the backstories for those characters gets filled in like in other books, so it's like irrelevant. Like there's this one character named like Mert, who's like a sniper, and he's like pretty badass, but he gets like shot in the throat, and he can't like he becomes like he can't
Dude, don't
shoot
spoil it
like
for
a
me.
sniper rifle
Come
anymore,
on,
so he becomes like
spoilers. What are you doing?
it's a short story, and he's in it for like 5 minutes, 5 seconds. He's like not even really in it. They like allude to him later on in the book series because they're running out of characters. Hey, since we're talking about books, what are you reading, man?
I'm currently listening to Alfarius, the Primarch book Alfarius, which is
Nice.
so far so good. Like it's what I like about it is I've learned a lot about like okay, how do I say this without spoiling it? Like okay. So here's a not a spoiler, which is that most of the
Okay.
Primarch books are set before the heresy, right? Right? Like
Mhm.
most of them. I haven't actually. This is actually the first Primarch book that I've read, but from my understanding, most of the Primarch books are basically set during the Great Crusade or like when the Primarch is discovered. They're kind of like it's like Primarch's the younger years, right? So I always think it's
Yeah.
really interesting to learn about the state of the Imperium during that time, like everything that was happening, kind of behind the scenes, getting to build the Imperium, what Malkador was up to, what the Emperor was up to before kind of the Great Crusade kicked off or during the Great Crusade. So it fills in a lot of that backstory that I didn't know before, which is really interesting, and I think is really interesting, especially going as far
Mhm.
back as like to when the Thunder Warriors were around. Like the history goes as far back. That's as much as I'll say because I don't want to spoil it. So it's been really interesting to kind of see the like very early stages. Like I don't know if you ever read Valdor, Birth of the Imperium, but that's like about Constantine Valdor, who obviously goes on to do other things as we talked about in the previous episode. But basically that was a really cool book too because it was like pre even Primarch, right? It was like very early on in the Imperium when like
The War of
yeah. And actually
Unification.
there's a line Corey Schultz just said RIP Thunder Warriors in chat, and there's actually a line in the Alfarius book that's like related to the Thunder Warriors. That's like, oh man, that's fucked. Like you kind of find out a little bit more about what happens to them and kind of where they all end up, and you're like, oh, that's really bad. That's all I'll say. Yeah. So yeah, so it's been really good. What about you? What have you been reading?
So I'm reading a different Primarch series book. It came out a little while ago. I just finally picked it up.
Oh, I
It's
picked that up too.
Luther.
Well, again,
So
for the record, guys,
so
whenever I say I'm reading a book, I just mean I'm audiobooking it because I like to listen while I paint. I don't like to do one thing or the other. I feel like it's inefficient. So I did purchase that on Audible as well.
uh,
That's next in my queue after Alfarius.
it's written by Gav Thorpe. So I come into this with a very low bar. But it's actually not horrible yet. I'm about halfway through it, and it's about like after after Caliban gets like
Mm-hmm.
demolished pretty much, and they find Luther, they literally throw him in a stasis cell and they start interrogating him. And one of the really cool things about the book is that like Luther is literally left the keepers in the
The
dark. I don't know
Jawas,
how they do it, but the keepers, the
40k Jawas.
yeah, the tone
Yeah.
berries from Final Fantasy. I call do you ever
I
play
mean, I've
Final
played some of them.
Fantasy?
Yeah, I haven't played all of them.
Do you know the tone berry? It's like a turtle in a
Not
robe.
really. Sorry,
No.
I'm not that
Um.
caught up.
Anyways, it reminds me of what they would probably be. And so Luther is kept in stasis, and then the Grand Master of the Chapter of Dark Angels is the only person who can actually like interrogate Luther, I guess. And he's like telling these stories and telling and recalling like what happened during like the falling apart of the
Mm-hmm.
rock and of Caliban. So it's a really fascinating like timeline because he keeps like waking up out of stasis to talk to a different
Oh,
like
okay.
Grand Master of the Dark Angels. So it starts off right when the heresy ends, and then it just goes like right now I'm halfway through it, and they're like
That's
5,000 years
interesting.
past the heresy, and for him he's only lived like
That's
50
crazy. Because
days
like I
since the
mean,
heresy technically.
yeah.
So
I was gonna say spoiler alert. He was
he's like
kept in
freaking
stasis
out.
under the rock for this 10,000 years, and he's just according to the Dark Angels, the newest codex, he's recently escaped. He's disappeared, so he's on the loose right now. as far as the background, current background
Yeah.
is concerned, right?
Um,
In the Dark
I
Angels
think
Codex, like it
so.
literally,
I
there's a
don't.
line where it's like,
Oh, they
yeah, they're
say
like the
that.
Watchers in the Dark, like Luther's disappeared, and like the Lion is still sleeping down there, in the bowels, and only the Watchers in the Dark know that he's there.
Yeah,
So
because in the book they're all trying to ask him what happened to like Lionel Johnson, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I haven't seen him.
yeah,
So
so
it's kind of
maybe
fascinating.
that'll converge to that point where you realize that he's actually been there the whole time. Who knows?
That's what I'm hoping for. Like I said, I haven't read the entire book yet. I'm like halfway through it. I'll probably have it done by tomorrow, but it's not a bad read. All right, you know what? Like, it's not a garbage fire. It's not horrible. Battles in it. That's why. If there's no
Yeah,
fighting in it, I think it's a Gav Thorpe can write a book. If there's a battle in it, it just becomes like a floppy, wet napkin of a book.
all right. Previews. Just finishing the previews. Before we move on.
Yeah.
So today we saw box games and it was super lame. We saw 2 Pokemon. We saw Magikarp and Krabby models, and then we also saw some
Dude,
Necromunda
I
stuff.
cannot wait for that. Dude, the Necromunda stuff is
And then we
amazing.
saw like a preview for a video game that has already been previewed like 2 weeks ago. That was
Crazy.
the trailer that was like released on like YouTube.
I'd say like this release actually got me really excited. Because the new Delac stuff looks really cool. There's this thing in the game called like a Spectre. It's like a floating brain robot, and it's got like weird like it's like a robo jellyfish, and I'm really excited to have that for conversion bits, and also just like having these specialist models for the Delac. Like they have these like extra super powerful assassins, and then
Right.
these like juvie psychers. I'm curious to see what kind of bits you get out of that box.
Yeah.
So I'm like really happy. Also, a new unit. A new unit is always really cool.
And
Necromunda.
yeah, like don't get me wrong, the models are great. I mean, the weird brain sentinel thing is a little bit weird, and like the like crab and flying fish model are a little bit odd, and I think they're cute. So I mean, maybe, but we also saw today the for the first time ever a plastic Thunderhawk and some new Aeronautica Imperialist models. So what do you think of that? And what do you think of the
I
like trolling they
actually,
did where they're like plastic Thunderhawk, and then I mean as soon as I saw it I was like I know that it's fake. It's like small scale.
yeah, yeah. Frankly, I have yet to play Aeronautica. My thing about Aeronautica that I can't stand is that they made that game through Forge World. It fucking bombed, and then they tried to do it again, and it's like you had Battlefleet Gothic, and instead of when Battlefleet Gothic the computer games came out, like it got like a really cool resurgence. And it's like, and then around the same time the revamp of Aeronautica, and it's like, why not just do Battlefleet Gothic? You have people that actually like playing the video game, have a model game that supports it, had an amazing rule set. I mean, frankly, I think that Battlefleet Gothic is probably the best game that GW has ever created. That the rule set for that are just absolutely amazing. The expanded fleets became a little OP. Like Necrons are fucking stupid. I hate playing against Necrons in BFG, but the game itself, the mechanics are absolutely amazing, and it was really great with it. Instead of rehashing a game that bombed within a year of it releasing and no one cared about it, now they're just putting so much effort into another Aeronautica expansion. It was like, stop. At least I have, Space Marine models that are 30K era that I could put on my Titanicus models, I guess, like underneath their feet. I mean, there's that, I
Yeah,
guess.
well, I have a few thoughts on what you just said. So first, the fact that they have a Aeronautica plastic Thunderhawk means that they have CAD files for a plastic Thunderhawk. And as we've seen from the way that they scaled down the Imperial Knight, so the Imperial Knight originally for Titanicus, they essentially said they took the 3D CAD of the normal Imperial Knight and they scaled it down, and then they like updated it a little bit for Titanicus, and then they released it. So theoretically, if they have a 3D model of a Thunderhawk plastic, it could be they could already have a full scale 3D plastic Thunderhawk that they scaled down, or vice versa. They could take the small one and scale it up, What do you think of that? Do you think that's a potential that we're actually going to get a plastic Thunderhawk at some point? Because the CAD file exists, it just needs to get scaled up, 2,000%.
The thing is, unless Forge World goes to plastic,
They are
you're
though. All
never gonna
that
see
Aeronautica stuff's
GW
plastic,
actually
and
make.
all the Titanica stuff is plastic, and all the Blood Bowl teams are plastic, and the Necromunda stuff's plastic. So they're already doing plastic.
That's not necessarily true,
What do you mean?
actually.
That's a
The
Yeah.
expansion stuff, those are just specialist games. Forge World doesn't take
No,
care of those. They're still part of
Forge
G
World.
Games Workshop. Forge
No, dude.
World,
Forge World does all of Blood Bowl, Necromunda, um, and Warcry and Underworlds. Sorry, Underworlds I believe is the main range, but Titanicus and Aeronautica and this like Necromunda, those are all plastic and they're all Forge World.
they're not all. So anything that Forge World has been making for them as like an upgrade set
Right, but we're not
is
talking about
all
upgrade
resin
sets, dude. We're
still.
talking about
Because I
we're
buy
talking
them.
about like core things. Of course, they still will make resin models, but my point is they are making plastic models, and they will, I'm sure, produce future plastic models. Even the Gaunt's Ghost set, which is technically a Black Library thing, which is more Forge World than it is normal Games Workshop, is plastic as well. And a lot of the Black
Yeah.
Library special characters, like the Uriel Ventress, that was also in plastic. So that's still technically Forge World, as far as I know.
But if you go on Forge World's site, you can't buy those models. They're not like something you can buy from Forge
Some
World
of them you
though.
can.
No, none of them. The only thing you can buy is resin stuff.
Right.
That's
Okay.
it.
Maybe you're right. Anyways. All right. And then the other thing I was going to say is Battlefleet Gothic. So I have a full Imperial fleet. I have like it's painted in salamanders because that was my first Space Marine army back in third edition. So I have a full green Imperial fleet. It's all metal, and I also have like 8
Mhm.
cruisers from the original box set still on sprue. And I haven't talked to my parents or my dad
Nice.
in like 10 years. We're like estranged, but all my Battlefleet Gothic
Mhm.
stuff, including like all of my rule books, templates, markers, are all at my parents' house in Victoria in the basement. And I'm like I was having enough nostalgia to like actually reach out to my parents, my dad, who I hate, just so that I could ask him for my stuff. Like that's how much I want to play Battlefleet Gothic because I'm willing to like break a 10
Dude,
year like war of like not talking to my parents just so I can get my Battlefleet Gothic stuff.
oh shit. Dude, BFG is a thing of beauty, man. Like it's just such a
Yeah.
fun game. I just actually a couple years ago at Adepticon, I got like 4 Dauntless cruisers for $20, and I thought I
Are
was
those
gonna
the little
like
ones?
faint. They're like the mid-sized
Yeah.
cruisers. They're metal and they're like hard to find, and I got 4 for $20. And I was
I just don't care
like,
about playing airplanes. I want Battlefleet. So get rid of this Aeronautica and
I
give me like
know.
I don't know, give me cool planes. All right, David,
I know,
what have you been
right?
working on hobby
Yeah.
wise? I saw your painting before we started.
Hobby-wise.
Uh, and
So here's
yeah, what have you been working on
uh,
model wise painting?
so I don't know if anyone in chat has ever had this problem, but this is the first time this has ever happened to me where I built a model, primed it, started painting it, and midway through painting it, I forgot like half of the model to
What do you mean you forgot half the model, David? We lost David, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, you just
Darn it.
froze there for like a good 20 seconds. I heard half of the model
Oh,
and then you were like frozen. So after half of the model, what did you forget about half the model?
oh. I forgot to put half the model on
Oh,
the model.
that's awkward.
And I already
So
started
what did you
painting.
can
So
we see
today
what is that?
I forgot to add.
Oh
This
shit.
is a
There was a
sterilizer. Oh,
sterilizer,
it's
now it's
dropping.
dead.
This is that's still in
Okay.
all pieces. So it's a sterilizer conversion, and I forgot to put
Ah,
the wings on it. So I feel really stupid. So I had to like prime the wings last night, and then I just glued them on, and then I base coded them today. But I just felt really
oh,
stupid
it's all
doing
right.
that. I'm working on that and one of my
Nice.
balustri.
I
How
yeah, I'm
about?
gonna tell you. So a few things. I finished my Bellacore last week. I believe I finished. I'm gonna look at the date. 6 days ago, so that was after the show. My okay. So my Bellacore, I think I previewed it last week. I was like, oh, I kind of creeped it up on screen. it's been the most popular post I've had in my history of my social media. Um, like I had over, well, I'll tell you right now. So just on my Instagram, um, where's there?
There he is. Sexy 2,000 likes on that sexy beast.
Yeah, so on my Instagram, I have 32,000 views and over 2,000 likes on it. And then on my Twitter, I had like over 1,000, almost 1,000 likes and like 100 retweets. And then on the heavy metal group that I put it in on the Facebook, it was like over 1,000 likes. Like by far, by like a magnitude of 10, it's the most popular model. It's like people have been like retweeting it, so I'm still getting likes on it. So like, thank you everyone for that support. That's been awesome.
Yeah.
I also finished.
Nice. Congratulations.
Then
dude.
I started working on this guy here. This is a demon prince from Creaturecaster, and she's done now. And this is actually going to be donated to the 40 hours of 40K charity. 40 hours of 40K charity. That's basically a men's mental health charity. Also, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see the model, but I'm holding up a demon prince. So this is gonna be donated to the 40 hours of 40K charity, which is a men's mental health. Well, I don't know if it's just men; it might be all people, but that's a mental health charity based out of the UK. So I'm gonna be sending that off to the UK probably tomorrow. And that's actually, it was really cool for me to get involved in. That was actually the charity that Bobby Clark was involved in, who we interviewed quite a while ago. So that was really cool. It's cool. I was like, hey, how can I get involved? I was like, I have extra models. Like, let me paint something. So I'm gonna be donating that off. And I don't know. It's really cool for me to be able to contribute for something like that, because I've struggled with mental health a lot myself. Like I've had I've kind of fought with like anxiety and like depression, and I've had my bouts with substance abuse and stuff like that to fight those things. And so for me, it was really important to kind of be a part of something like that and be able to contribute. So I was happy to paint that model. And then I am now working on, I'm just trying to kind of clear my backlog before I get into this like crazy commission. So here I have a Soul Drinkers, basically it's a Indomitus Primaris Lieutenant from the box. That's what I'm working on right now. And it's actually a funny story about this model. I just released my part 2 of my painting videos for my Soul Drinkers on the YouTube channel. And it actually took me 3 times of filming that before I actually was happy with the footage. So this model I started was actually painted twice over for the original version of the video. And then I still decided after painting it twice, I didn't like the footage. So I went and I was going to do it a 3rd time, but I felt really bad starting to paint a 3rd model. So I ended up painting an Eradicator, which is what ended up making into the video. So then I was like, okay, well now I'm going to go finish this model. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been working on right now and what I'm working on. And then I'm going to be doing a few more painting videos, but that's actually a good segue. I've been thinking about kind of like what kind of content I want to do in the channel. And this is actually a good segue into kind of 2 topics that I want to talk about today with you, David, which is, I had a pretty spicy competitive corner on Monday where I kind of went off a little bit on kind of the as I was calling them, the Dark Eldar apologists, people that were basically in denial about the state of the affair, state of the book, basically. And I also talked about some of the people that have been kind of making a huge fuss about gatekeeping. And I then listened to Mini Wargaming Dave's podcast with JT McDowell yesterday, where they talk about why people complain. And it got me thinking, and I was like, do people view the fact that like we have opinions and like to have discussion about stuff and like to say what's good and bad as complaining? Because when I look at it, I love this hobby. Games Workshop's a huge part of my life. I love for the most part, as much as I don't agree with some of their practices, I love what they do, and I love the games and all that kind of. I love painting. I love the hobby, and so for me, talking about it and like having like good discussion about it and like saying what's good and what's bad and like kind of being almost having that kind of level of punditry where we're almost like analyzing the game and like what's good, like that for me is fun. I don't think of that as complaining, right? And I guess my question to you is like, how do you feel about that? Because do you feel like we, or me or whoever, when we talk about these things, like, and we're going to talk about the meta in a bit, like, is that complaining to you? Like, how do you perceive that? Because for me, it's just like being passionate about something and discussing and like having lots of really great discussion about it.
Well, discussion is It's a discussion if you have 2 points. Yeah. If it's just everyone agreeing and then all saying like, this thing sucks, and everyone being like, yeah, it does suck. You know why it sucks? Is this is why it sucks. And you're like, I agree, that sucks too, but also disagree, this sucks. Like, that's not really like a discussion. That's just like, I feel like everyone just kind of like raising the pitchforks. I'm happy to talk about like, like if a book bothers you or a codex release bothers you, talking about like the things that are like efficient in the book, being like, oh, these are great, but I think like this is too powerful, and then talking about how you can like turn it down, or like how you can like, dark artists, like was it dark artisans or artisans technology, what the fuck that ability's called? Dark if they just changed it back to the way, yeah, if they just changed the ability back to just being like, oh, if you do a wound roll of 1, your guy dies, or like before your model attacked, roll a d6 on a 1, remove him from the game. Like shit like that is like a way that would fix that problem. And everyone's like, no, make liquefier guns more expensive. I'm like, that doesn't solve, if you don't play dark technomancers, like you're just hurting every other construct that wants to use liquefiers. That's not fair. But it's that rule that causes the problem. And it's more about like discussion can be how do we make it better? How do we change it to make it good or balanced?
Yeah. But I mean, I guess from my perspective, like, and this is kind of the second segue. I said there'd be 2 segues, which is talking about the kind of content that I want to do on the channel. What I've been thinking about is like, so I did the How to Paint Soul Drinkers video, and I have 2 more videos that I'm planning to do. I'm going to do on Death Guard armor, and I'm going to be doing Sister of Battle. But like, when I looked about the amount of time that I put into that, right? And also I'm just looking at the environment currently on, various YouTube content creators. There's so much painting stuff out there. And what I'm realizing is like, unless there's a very specific like thing that someone wants to see, like people have requested very much that show me how you do your Death Guard, or the Sister of Battle I'm doing for someone else. I don't think that like doing a bunch of painting videos is really going to be where I want to spend my time. Like I'd much rather do like editorial content, discussion. I'd much rather do like talking to people about important things. Like my interview with Peter from Kuchicaster today was like super interesting for me, and that was like really exciting for me to do. And as much as I'm still going to do like edited content, like like doing videos, and I'm going to do actually I'm doing like a 6-part series on my Dark Angels commission, and it's going to be like kind of in the mind of a commission painter. I'm going to do like all the like every stage of that, like from building it and kind of how I approach it. Like it's going to be much more broader. I'm not going to do like, here's your 12 steps of how to paint this technique, because right now it seems like that kind of content is everywhere on the internet, and I want to really do things that are a little bit more unique and a little bit more interesting, I guess, for me anyways. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention is that moving forward for the channel, it'll probably be a lot, I'll probably not be doing as much, not that I'm doing a lot right now, but I'm not going to be like going all in on like edited painting stuff, like unless there's a specific need or there's like a special tips and tricks thing. For the most part, I look at some of the videos that like some of the artists that are very good painters, much better than me, are doing, and it just feels like that kind of content is going to get a little bit lost in the grand scheme of things. So I think I'd much rather just prefer to do stuff that's interesting and fun and like creative, rather than like, hey, here's a 12-step painting video, right? Like that doesn't seem that I guess it doesn't seem that engaging. So
fair enough.
All right, any games played? I saw you actually at an event this weekend. What have you been up to?
Yeah,
I saw you actually. You even came. I don't want to spoil it for people, but how did you do?
I did pretty
right,
good.
Tell us about it.
I went to a 24-person event. That's technically a GT, right?
28 GT, but yeah.
Okay, right on. Yeah, so I went to a 24-person event in Syracuse, which is like about 3 hours from where I live.
People are like, what? You drove 3 hours to play in a 24-person event? That's mental. And I'm like, no, that's normal. Welcome to North America.
That's yeah. It was funny because the night before I indulged a bit too much and I woke up extremely hungover. And my friend was like, if you're gonna come with me, you have to be. He lives about an hour away from where I live, and I was like, I'll drive to you, and you drive the rest of the way from your house over. And I called him at like 6 in the morning. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm in. And I like got in my car and like crawled to his house. And then on the way there, I wrote my army list.
Of course you did.
and I'm sitting there with my new Metallica supplement, like, oh man, like that's a cool strat. Oh, that could be cool with this unit. Oh, that would work really well with the new this and that. So I just kind of like made an army list like in the car as we were driving, and I did really well. I went 3-0. I didn't get to really play out my last turn of my last game, and that probably would have made me in contention for first, but that's okay. I had a really fun time, kind of like goofing off the
That's
entire
awesome.
event. It was a lot of
Congratulations.
fun.
See, we do actually play
Was,
40K on this show. We're not just like talking heads, you know. We do actually play the game.
I, I like how people just think I just talk shit about 40K, and then they're like, "Do you even know how to play it?" Yeah, because guess what? I won myself a brand new
Oh wow,
Titanicus
is that the new
model.
one?
That's the the War
Dude, that's
Master.
sick.
I'm
That's
so
awesome.
excited, and I got a new campaign book for myself, so I'm super excited. I got a Warbringer Nemesis Titan and a War Master Heavy Battle Titan to build
That
for my mana pools. So I'm like
that War Master, I've been
super
seeing
fucking
sprue
excited.
pictures, and it looks like it's a trillion pieces. Like it's insane how many parts there are to those things.
It is. um but yeah, no, it felt really good because I don't know about you, Jim, but this is my first time playing a competitive 40K game of 9th edition. That was my first. It was my fourth time playing with AdMech in 9th
So
edition.
AdMech confirmed broken.
So fourth, fifth, sixth. Yeah, I mean, like I'm an idiot, and I like with goofy units, and well, you can do some really wild combos with all the different buffs and strats. With the new book coming down, though, I think it'll be a little much more streamlined. Because right now, like, I have 3 books worth of strats and special rules to play with, which is kind of silly when you think about it. But I would say probably after my second game, I finally figured out the strats that I should have been using.
Right.
Because I kept screwing up so bad. It was great though. I had a great time.
Yeah, I haven't played in any events at all. I've played only 4 games of 9th edition in real life since it launched. I did play one TTS game on Sunday against Drukari, my Terminus S list versus which is like 120 models of Drethguard. Like it's about
Yeah.
100 Poxwalkers and some Terminators sprinkled in. And I played. It was like I lost 78-77, which was really disappointing. And then I have one TTS game tomorrow evening for this last round of this like tactical tortoise pod, which I'm really excited to just be over with. Like I'm literally like I don't want to play these games, guys, because like my list sucks. I brought the Terminus S list, and it's just been so, it's not only is it a bad list, but in TTS it's like it's so grueling because you're moving like 110 digital 120 digital Poxwalkers, so you're like literally like like it's such a pain to play. So that's been that. I'm actually getting my vaccine tomorrow, my first shot. So hopefully that means I'll be able to start playing some more real life games pretty soon, and especially with the new my 5G upgrade. And then I think we're playing one last round of scrimmage against the Greece team. Team Canada is, so I'm playing a weird chaos like defender list against them, and I think we're doing pairings this week. So I'll have some WTC Greek versus WTC TTS scrimmage matches versus Greek coming up on my channel as well. So that'll be checking out. All right, so that's kind of our weekly preamble.
I was gonna say one more thing. This is gonna help like roll into the next section. Don't worry, it makes sense. So after the event, I was talking to the judge, Brian Horton, who's one of the judges at Atlantic City GT, and he goes, "Hey, are you coming to Atlantic City GT?" And I'm like, "Oh, like when is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's in June. Like it's sold out, but we might be putting more tables in, or we might put you on a waiting list." And I was like, "I don't know. Like we'll think about it." And on the way home, it had me thinking. I'm like, I really haven't played much competitive 40K lately, and prior to COVID, like I was going to like majority of every big GT that was like within like an 8-hour drive of like where I lived. And it had me thinking like I gotta write a list, and it's like, oh my god, then I gotta like, is this list gonna work against like actual like real competitors? And it had me thinking, it's like, what is the state of the meta, and what do I need to prepare myself for if I'm going into an event That's probably one of the first like big events in the Northeast. I know we had some bigger events in the U.S. like was it Dallas?
Yep.
We had a big one like
Dallas
last
GT, that was
weekend.
last weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a humongous event.
It was like
Like, it was a big
170, I
event,
think.
and like
Yeah.
now we're
This
getting
will
like
be
our
like
first.
250s plus.
Yeah, yeah, and so looking into it, it's like I was a big proponent when it came to talking about meta. I was always like, we're not going to see a real meta emerge until we get these giant events in where we see top players competing against top players on actual real tables playing real games
Yeah.
of 40K. And I think we're going to start seeing like a big shift in like what is really the meta for 40K. I'm really excited about it, and it had me thinking about like if I were to go to this event, like how should I like approach this? You know, this is like the first like unveiling of a lot of like probably like meta
Right.
lists.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree and disagree. I think like it's kind of where it's just in a weird place right now. I did hear a rumor today. I don't know how accurate it is, but I'll read you what it said, which is quite salacious.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
and it says that
Oh.
there is
Oh,
word
Jim.
that there's going to be a big FAQ coming soon to address many balance issues in the game. Yeah, so I won't say who that's from or where it came from, but a rival source on the playtest team, I'll say. So yeah, so that's interesting. But I guess my point is like we have AdMech coming out. I believe it'll go on pre-order next Saturday, the 15th, and then it will be released on the 22nd or something, or the 21st, 22nd. And then we probably have Sisters in June, I'd presume, based on the spacing and Book of Rust. And then obviously we'll find out tomorrow what we're going to see in the GW preview. So I think I guess my point is like I think we're really far behind, and like we haven't had a real balance pass, so it's hard to say. And the other thing too, and this is like a big thing, like although some areas of the U.S. are playing and are opened up, not everywhere is, and a lot of people are still not comfortable to fly. So I think the meta is still very much like it's kind of like we're seeing like just like a shadow of it. You know what I'm saying? Like we're seeing kind of the shape. We're starting to see kind of a rough shape, but we're not seeing the true thing, right? Like we're seeing kind of like a version of it, but it's kind of like a shadow meta, if that makes sense. But so I don't know. We'll see what happens because like I feel like we're due for a bit of a balance pass at this point, given that all the books that have come out. I'm really curious if we're going to get a chapter approved and or field manual in the summer. So they haven't really announced it. So we'll see. Hopefully tomorrow brings something like that, like at least an announcement of one, and a mission update because I think that's really important right now. So, and plus I can't come, so obviously I set the meta, which means that I'm not doing that.
Sorry, Jim. You're gonna take a seat. I'm setting the meta now.
Yeah, the chaos meta doesn't exist until I tell you guys what it is. So, yeah.
Oh, is that how it is? I thought there was like 3.
It's definitely not Terminus S. That's for sure.
You heard it here now.
Yeah, the Bellacore meta is coming though.
If it doesn't have good rules,
I've seen the rules.
You have to play it.
So we've seen the stat line from the box, and we've seen the data. We've seen the special rules on the weapon, and his defensive stats: -1 to hit, and I believe -1 to wound. In from ranged, and I think he's -1 to hit always. And he's got a 4+ invuln, and then he's got like his Blade of Shadows, which is basically a monster. It ignores invuls. So it's like AP4 or AP5, ignores invuls. Strength, he's like strength 12. He's got like 7 attacks. Like he's got a sweep attack, so he's good against everything. So that's tasty. And he's 16 wounds, which means he can hide behind obscuring terrain, which is amazing. So he's got some beef in him. He's got some Chad strength in there. So the question will just be like, how many points is he, and how does he, and he's also got a spell discipline called it's like a shadow discipline basically. I can't remember the exact name, but he'll get some sort of like spells that are like, you know, shadowy of some kind. I don't know what that means, but anyways, we'll see what happens. Yeah, so about Ninja says in chat, he says the secondaries need to be completely reworked. Yeah, I 100% agree. Like it's just I don't know. Like I know that ITC took a long time to kind of get their secondaries right, but a lot of these GW ones, they just seem so trash. You know, they just seem like they were just like
Yeah,
there's just so little thought put into them.
I think the problem is like the codex secondaries are so good at times that it's like it's almost frustrating that like other books don't have access to codex specific secondaries. Like if they want to do like a chapter approved or something with like points add additions, maybe they could give everyone like at least one faction specific secondary because like the honor the chapter ones for Space Marines are some of them are
Yeah.
just stupid. Or like the Blood Angel one where it's like if I have more units in your deployment zone than my opponents, I get points. It's like turn one, you can have a Death Company unit like in your opponent's deployment zone, just mauling everybody, and you're like, okay, well, I get my secondary
Yeah.
turn one. It's like cool, and then it just never stops.
Yeah. So we'll see how it evolves, but I think,
uh,
I think Dark Angels obviously I'm hoping they get a little bit of a look, and I don't want to get too much into it today because it's a whole discussion. But I what I said on Monday, and I reiterate here, I'm actually not worried about it, to be honest. I think we'll see some balance changes, and at this point, it's just about waiting to see what they end up being. I'm actually glad GW didn't do like anything knee jerk, and they're actually maybe hopefully taking time to look at it and maybe look at the other books as well and do that kind of like larger balance pass FAQ. I think that's a great idea, and I just wish they'd communicate it is the only thing, and I wish people would I also just wish people would be honest about the state of the armies and not be like, no, everything's fine, everything's perfect, everything's balanced. Like the goal of all players should be to get a more equitable game where the armies are as close to the power level as they are, even though they have different play styles. And anyone that is like when you're dishonest about where the factions truly are, that's a lot harder to achieve because people kind of play the game with blinders on. So what other what other meta stuff do you want to talk about? Because you mentioned that you want to talk about the meta.
I think so. The idea I was thinking about is that Jim and I think, are quite opposed on multiple things. Um, sometimes, and I feel like when it comes to competitive 40K, I feel that when discussions of the meta come up, I know Jim is a person who closely follows like the meta, and I am
Right?
not. And I find it really fascinating. Like Jim, like because you always like follow the meta, like how much does the meta affect your list building?
Well, okay, so I think there's two kind of distinctions to make there. One is like
Mm-hmm.
chasing the meta. So and what I mean by that is I'm always changing my list to like the new hottest thing, right? So I'm literally saying this is what's good or this army is good. So I'm gonna just switch to that army and just play those units. That's kind of like chasing the meta. Following the meta is just being aware
Mm-hmm.
of what is good for me, which I always do,
Mm-hmm.
and then playing what I think is good to counteract those things. So I definitely do the second thing more than the first thing. Like if if there's everyone's
Mm-hmm.
playing a single list, I might, look at those units, see how they fit in my overall play style, that kind of stuff. But I generally like to have my own version of stuff. I don't like to copy lists. I don't like to net list generally. But I am always aware of
Mm-hmm.
like what's the big boogeyman out there, what are the armies that are good, and what kind of tools do I want to make sure to include in my lists to defeat those armies. And so that for me is like
Mm-hmm.
following the meta and staying in touch with it. But I'm not like chasing it by net listing like the newest hottest thing every month. Like I still play chaos primarily. Obviously I'm painting some soul drinkers, which are basically chaos. And then I was thinking of starting Dark Mechanicus, which are also basically chaos. So for me, Chaos is my
Mm-hmm.
faction, and that's the faction that I continue to play. And they're not necessarily the best army faction in the book. They're very strong. They can be, but I don't own any Keeper of Secrets, and those are very good in the meta. I don't own any, Decimators, and those are very good. There's like lots of unit choices that I just don't own because I don't necessarily want to play with those models. So I'd say I follow it close enough to
Mm-hmm.
stay competitive, but I don't chase it where I'm constantly trying to paint things just to like play the flavor of the month army. Like I'm not gonna go buy Dark Elder army. Like zero chance.
Yeah. um so like because you've been I mean like because right now Death Guard is probably one of like the stronger lists that are
Mm,
out there.
mm,
Do you feel
no,
no, Jim?
no.
Tell me
So okay. So
more.
Death Guard
Tell
are
me
good.
more.
I'd say they're like A tier right now. They're not S tier. S tier for me is Sisters, Drukhari,
What
and
is
Sisters, Drukhari, Admech are probably S tier right now. And then I'd say Death Guard. So here's the thing: Chaos Soup, I would say is S tier. Chaos Soup, Death Guard as a pure faction is probably A tier. So for Death Guard to really be like scary, you need things like Warp Time. You need things like some of the jank and shenanigans from the Demons book or the Chaos Space Marine book, in my opinion. So with that, it force multiplies them to the point where they are actually S tier and they are very strong. Just pure Death Guard as a faction, I'd say they're closer to A tier. They can, fight out with Space Marines in most books, but they still lose to things like Death Guard, pure Death Guard lose to Harlequins almost every game because they're just too slow. They lose to Drukhari every game because they're too slow. They lose to Sisters because they just get outranged and melted to death and they're too slow. They never get a charge off against Sisters, especially with Repentia doing like 11-inch charges across the table out of transports, like 14-inch, 20-inch charges. They're just never going to be able to get the jump on those armies. And then those armies can pick and choose where they fight the game, how they play the game. And they just don't have enough shooting on their own or speed on their own to play at that like very high level. So Chaos Soup I think is S tier and can compete with all those lists. And sometimes that Chaos Soup will include Death Guard, whether it's Mortarion or other parts. But as a pure faction, I would say Death Guard is closer to A tier, which is like just below.
Do you feel like coming into like this competitive circle again? Are you running mono Death Guard or are you trying to push towards more of a soup?
Well, right now, I mean, I haven't played a ton. I've played a lot of mono Death Guard and mostly to discover what they're capable of because I already know everything that Chaos Demons does, Chaos Space Marines does, and Thousand Suns do because those didn't change. Those didn't change edition to edition. Like all their abilities and tech, like spells, stratagems, playstyles is the same because they don't have new books. So I've spent a lot of time playing pure Death Guard just to kind of understand how the faction works, what's good, what's bad. And now that I know that, I'm able to take those good parts, the choicest bits, as they say, and put those into a soup list with some of the choicest bits from, Thousand Suns or Demons or Chaos Space Marines. But again, to be fair, I'm not building, like, I'm done painting my Death Guard. There's nothing else I need to own. And right now, I think after I'm done some of these Soul Drinker stuff, the next thing I might put together some Noise Marines or like buy one Keeper Secrets. Like I'm just building stuff for fun at this point and kind of what's cool. I'm at that point right now.
All right on. Yeah, I just like, and the other thing too is, do you feel that because when you don't run meta, do you feel like you have an advantage compared to people who do run meta?
I mean, like you're using the word meta very kind of broadly. I try to run strong.
Let's go with this.
I try to run strong lists, and if you look at Chaos as a faction, there are a lot of very different strong lists. So there isn't really one that's like, it's not like the Days of the Plague Bearer list where like that was like the de facto Chaos list, right? Nowadays there's lots of very very strong Chaos builds, like Mortarion builds, Bash Brother builds, Monster Mash builds, Death Guard mix builds. There's Mark Perry's kind of crazy Chaos, like Alphabet Soup build with like all sorts of weird stuff that no one actually understands. You can build Decimator build. So I've seen Thousand Suns with Leviathans. Like there's a lot of different Chaos builds right now that I think are competitive. And they're not all equally as strong, but like they're all different playstyle, and there's not any one right now that I'm like, oh, this is the only list that you should be playing.
Well, what I was asking is like, do you feel like there's an advantage to not playing meta right now? Like, what's the pop like from like running away from like the usual builds? Like right now, like we see a lot of like raiders filled with like liquefier guns, and like specific Drukhari builds we're starting to see like forming on the outskirts. Do you feel that like knowing
what's your question? Because I feel like you're dancing around something you want to ask, but you're trying to get me to like, you're trying to lure me into something, and I'm
just gonna I'll just say screw it. What I was gonna say is that I find that like not running, like knowing that like what are popular builds and what is a trend from a lot of armies, you can use that as an advantage. I usually don't like running anything that really resembles like popular builds for my factions, and I find that you can use that to your advantage because you know what other armies will be playing or will have specific like combinations of things. Like if you're playing as Harlequins, you know you're going to be running against like 2 gigantic units of Haywire bikes and a bunch of like Star Weavers full of fusion pistols. Like you know you're going to deal with that. So start thinking about like builds that can counteract or aren't affected by those type of weapons or something. Like or if like right now the temperature is like very melee heavy, working on an army that has really good anti-melee like debuffs or like pushes people back.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think so.
And
You like to pretend that you're some sort of like fluff non-meta builder, but like you're actually you're approaching the way that you approach the game in a very common way, which is you're using the advantage of kind of like unknown armies to actually be a counter to armies. So like there is a approach to playing where if you play like there's what's that saying in security where it's like obscurity, it's like where like your best security is like being obscure, just people not even knowing that you exist, versus like having like a really, it's like instead of having a really strong lock on your door, you just don't let anyone even know that where you live, right? Like that's much more powerful to not let people know where you live than like a very strong lock. And you're kind of approaching the meta in that same way where it's like people don't know where you live, right? Like they just don't, they've never seen your army, they don't know how to play against it. So rather than trying to break a lock, they don't even know you're coming. You're like you're sneaking up on them. Security by obscurity. Thank you, KPI. So that's kind of how that's kind of you're doing like you're winning via obscurity, right? Like you're winning because when you get to the table, people don't have reps against your list, they don't have practice against your list, but just as you admitted, you actually follow those lists and know how to play against them, so you actually follow the meta too. You just don't play lists that are you're not playing like you're not playing like meta lists, you're playing counter meta lists, you're playing lists that are off meta, and that actually is its own meta, right? Like that's its own set of style, right? Like when you look at like Mark Perry's list that he won Dakicon I think with recently, it was like Noise Marines, Mortarion, a Leviathan, like some Death Guard I think thrown in there, like an Armin at some point, like all sorts of weird jank, right? And it's like that is such a, people are so unfamiliar with that list, even if it might not be the best on paper list, the lack of people's ability to know how it plays actually pushes it past the strength of those other more commonly known lists. Right. So you're kind of playing that way, which I actually think is a very valid way to play. Like Drukhari right now, everyone knows the kind of 6-7 components in like the good Drukhari builds: Cult of Strife, Dark Technomancers, Six Raiders, the Archon, you got Incubi, you got your like 3 patrols, like you got like it's like I could like literally write a Dark Eldar list, a meta Dark Eldars, and so now people are building to tech against that. But now what if you showed up with like a 5 flyer Dark Eldar list? People are like, oh fuck, I wasn't planning, I was teching against Dark Eldar, but now I have to face 3 Void Ravens and 2 Razor Wings, and I wasn't ready for that. And all of a sudden it's off meta, but it's still strong, right? So there's nothing wrong with that.
I find it just really fast. No, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to like demonize people for doing that. What I was thinking about though lately is that idea of like preparing with a counter meta list has been really helpful for me because I go to Nova usually, I go to Adepticon, I go to a lot of the larger events in like in Ontario. The last LVO I went to, and a bunch of events like that. And what I always notice is that like I'll play a bunch of wonky stuff that probably sucks. And well, if you're gonna pen and paper it out, yeah, it does suck. But when I play against an opponent, like when Iron Hands were the hotness, like I would sit in front of them and be like, well, I know what your army does. I know what everything your army is going to do. Like you can almost kind of like play out your opponent's first 3 turns because of how efficient they do and what they do. So I think it's helpful that like I'm not saying like don't look at the meta. Like I definitely do look at the meta when I'm actually playing at these events. I mean, I just haven't taken a care to look at anything lately. It's because I barely play the game. But even after going to like one tournament, like I was talking to like 4 random people, and they were just like Drakari were such a boogeyman. They were all writing lists to fight Drakari, and it's like, no, there wasn't even a single Drakari player that showed up to
Yeah.
that event.
Well, I think
There's more death
like
guard
I
than
think
anything else.
like I literally, and I'm not joking. I was flipping through my Thousand Suns codex last night, and I was like, I wonder how Mutalith Vortex Beast would be like right now. So I was like rereading their data sheet, and I'm like, no one ever plays them, but
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe there's something like one of the things I actually really like about when new books come out. So like I like having like a bit of a boogeyman like Dark Eldar on the block and Admech obviously is
Uh-huh.
that like it you can go back to older books and you re-examine options and units that maybe didn't really have a purpose or weren't really good against a lot, but now that there's like that new monster, right, or that new boogeyman on the meta block, they now have
Yeah.
relevance. And also it could be things like relics, could be certain psychic powers where before you wouldn't have thought to take them, but now that
Oh
like
yeah.
imagine I had a Drukari, and I'm just gonna make an example. Imagine there's like a relic that like auto wounded and auto hit Drukari, right? Maybe that's something I would never have taken, and I would have just kind of passed it over. But now that all of a sudden is like something really like strong, or maybe something that like, or maybe something that is
Yeah.
like is the right profile that would be really good at killing raiders. But I normally there wasn't a lot of stuff with that profile, so I didn't bother. I was even looking at like Whirlwind Scorpiuses, which are like kind of fell out of favor since they lost their double shoot. But like Decimators, like there's also and even Bombard Cannons. I was like looking at what's non-line of sight shooting. So like I was looking at Bombard Cannons because I have two of them for my
Yeah.
chaos, and I was like, oh, like maybe those would be cool to throw into a chaos list to help clear off little things of dark infantry. But they're 120 points, and it's absolutely insane how expensive they are points wise. But anyways, my point is, one of the things I really like about
Yeah.
new books coming out is going back to old books and like re-examining and like looking at everything in a new light as the meta evolves. Everything evolves around it, right? So it's like, oh, like
Yeah.
this unit that maybe wasn't useful before is all of a sudden really good against Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
So now I wouldn't have thought about it, but now I'm going to give it a lot more
Yeah.
consideration. So I actually do think that's a really fun part of the ever changing meta, and I like that the meta changes because it means that units come in and out of favor.
Yeah. So like you said you were looking at the Mutalix Vortex Beast. Is
Yeah.
there anything else that you've been kind of eyeballing it? You're like, I wonder how this might work. Because I've been doing the same thing with my
Well, as
books.
I said, the Bombard. I always go through the Forge World stuff because Forge World is it's such a like it's such a mine of like either grossly undercosted things, grossly overpowered things, or like things that don't have a use until they have a use. So
Yeah.
like you look at the Volcon the Volkite Contemptors, which are like become like the best dreadnought in the game
Yeah.
now, especially against Yukari, and they were already good at Death Guard. So now I'm like, oh, do I need a third one? But yeah, I was looking at like Whirlwind Scorpius. I was looking at like Achilles Land Raider with the it's got like the it's got like a bombard cannon as well. It's got las cannons. I was like, oh, maybe Land Raider Achilles would be fun. Something like that, right? Like, and then yeah, I looked at I was looking at I was even looking at Zangor
Yeah.
Skyfires and like the guys with the bows because they have assault 2 bows. Um yeah, Pete, I
Yeah.
did. Jim, someone's asking if I saw the Goonhammer editorial. Yeah, I saw it, and I'm pretty sure I talked to James at some point. All those changes, like I literally those were the exact changes I would have made. There's a few more I would have made to do balance. I was gonna actually do a video on it, but I decided not to because they put out a perfect article. But anyways, my point is like I was looking at Zangors. I was like, Zangors don't see much play these days. Let me take another look at their profile, see if they're, they're fast. They move like 12 to 14, I think. They have bows, assault 2. They're decent in combat, right? So I was like, oh, this could be like a unit that maybe has some play against like Drukari, right? That I wouldn't have otherwise looked at. So I do like that.
Yeah.
I was actually even rereading the Predator chassis. I was like, oh, maybe Chaos Predators would make like with autocannons and like las cannons are now like a cool thing. Obviously, they're not, but like
Yeah.
I definitely went back and looked. So
Nice. Yeah, it's been really fun. I know like you're kind of the same way as I am with like your main army. Like you're not just like a meta like chaser. You're more of an
mhm.
army collector. You know what I mean? Like you have like everything at your disposal if you so choose to. I do the same thing. Like my AdMac, I'm in the works of building one of everything, and then I'm
Mhm.
duplicating now. So no matter where like the books or FAQ shift my army, I can still like have stuff to play with. Or I mean, It's tragic. I do have 6 dragoons, and they just sit there collecting dust right now. But they had their fun for like 3
Yeah, but like,
editions.
I mean, they'll be back, right? At some point.
Oh, we'll see. I mean, right now I'm been having a blast painting up and converting sterilizers. I started working on my Instagram. I just posted a new Cataphrine destroyer conversion. It's like a plasma cannon. I never did plasma cannon Cataphrine destroyers, so I'm building a unit of 4 just to have because I think it'd be kind of cool to have like new
Yeah.
robots. Um, so I mean, I want to build a unit of Sky Stalkers, the other Petraxi unit. I'm working on a unit of Sulfur Hounds right now. It's just luckily I'm very fortunate. I have a codex that's extremely robust with different
Hmm.
variety of units. And so like depending on like what I want to play, I mean, they're not the best units, but they're pretty multifaceted. So I've been like having a really fun time like seeing how the meta's been changing because everyone's like, oh, like fuck, like -1 damage, Death Guard is so stupid, and all the Dark Angels inner circle stuff is really stupid. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just running a bunch of 1 damage stuff that's like either strength 6 or strength 4, and like if you -1 that ignores cover, or -2
Yeah.
ignores cover. Like, I mean, it kind of like goes around it, but at the same time, it's like good against Horde, good against what I need, and it's been a fun time, like kind of like reassessing like what I've been building and like what I can add, but also bulking out my collection. I mean, I'd like to see you do a
Oh,
Vortex
like,
Beast.
so I think what I'm gonna end up doing is one thing that I've wanted to do that like I don't have even all the 4 good demons, and I know there's the new 2 Sinesh ones, so I think I'll probably pick up, and I don't have any demonettes at all, so I have very little Sinesh. So I think I'm gonna pick up a keeper and 30 demonettes, and that'll give me 30 of each of the
Yeah.
basic core troops for demons. So I'll have 30 bloodletters, 30 horrors, 30. So I'll have 60 plague bearers, but and then a
Yeah.
keeper. So I have that, and then I think I actually do want to pick up a great and clean one and a bloodthirster, just so I can have like I want like the 4 gods. Um, and then we'll see kind of where we're
Yeah.
at that point. Like that's kind of my next focus, to just kind of start adding and filling in my demons book, because I think they could be good. So I think maybe pick up some fiends again, things that I'm not using right now and they aren't good, but I have time, and I mean obviously I have a lot of other painting stuff to do, but nothing. I'm not building anything for like a specific list right now. So I just want to start filling in the backlog and things that I'm missing, and
Hmm.
just kind of completing my collection a bit more. That way, when the books do drop, demons and or chaos, I'm ready to go. Demons or space and chaos space marines. All right, David. Anything else? I think that was it's been about an hour and a half here, so I think that's probably it. I can hear you typing.
I think so.
It's
Sorry.
okay.
I just KPI is saying that as Necron player, they have the incentive to take a Void Dragon over the Nightbringer because of the increase of vehicles hitting the table. I think that's like really awesome because that's a really cool model, and I've been like waiting for people to have
Yeah.
incentive to play that model. I'd love to see more of them. Like, I don't know. That's the other thing too, is like because of the meta changing, people are trying to find new answers, which then brings it to, when you're playing against your opponents, you're not playing against the same cut and paste build every single table. You get more diversity. I think that's always a good thing to see when you're playing 40k. The last thing you want to do is play against the same plague bear army 3 times in a row or something. That was an 8th edition. I feel like I ran into that a lot. I'm just like, cool, 60 plague bears. Cool, 60 plague
Yeah.
bears. So it's nice to see like that people are putting an effort into like creating like their own little niche where like they have their own little spin on a list. I feel like Necrons. I wish Necrons had more of a presence right now in 40k. They have so many cool tools. Like the dynasties are all really interesting. I mean, Jim, how do you feel about like the Necron
I mean,
dynasties
I
and
don't
stuff?
honestly. The whole Necron book confuses me between the orders and the command protocols and the dynasties, and then like the various like lords you need just to actually have half of it work. I'm like I don't know. Yeah, I just like I don't have to try to figure it out. I tried reading the book once. I'm like, this is very confusing.
Oh, until
I was like,
you.
I don't actually know how my army works. This army works. I just know Satans are good.
It's a pretty.
Satans, whatever, however you say it.
Yeah. I'm just really excited to see more variety in dynasties. One of my favorite. Oh, they have Vact. That's cool. There's been this one thing about Necrons that like I have an Indominus set, and I've been kind of like thinking about building those Necrons out. Because I really like there's a dynasty that lets them like I think they can auto advance 6 inches, and they can, when they advance, they ignore intervening models and terrain and everything. And I think that's a really fascinating idea for an army right there. And the idea too is that like if you like his will be done, I think you can add +1 to like your movement or like your advanced rolls or something. I forget exactly, but like you can have like I feel like Necrons could have like a hyper fast army like in disguise, and I think that's really cool to like not just play like a block of like warriors and just sitting on like double obsec objectives and then like resorbing them all back to life, instead having like some sort of like super ultra fast Necron build. I think it'd be, I don't know. I get really excited when I think of armies that shouldn't be built a certain way being played differently, like a melee Imperial Guard army. I think is always really awesome. I played one of those in 5th edition, and I absolutely like adored it. Like there's, I love when I see the flexibility of codexes, and hopefully with the current meta being like, I don't know, like people are trying to stomp out Dark Eldar, I think we're going to see a lot more interesting random units popping up that are going to be very nichey just to fight them, which is going to be really cool.
We'll see what happens, and hopefully we do get that balance pass. But I'm going to wrap up the episode there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It has been a fun night. David, thank you for not having your internet hamster die. Guys, that is the best overall show, episode 8 in the bag. 2 more episodes and we hit episode 10, which is apparently if we can hit episode 10, we won't die horrible deaths in the podcasting kingdom. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys